Hey, you mentioned Darby Allin. Were you at the show, the homecoming show
I
in
was.
Jackson?
I was. I had a lot of moving parts backstage on Wednesday, but I did see it afterwards. Wow.
Did you get to see Darby afterwards? Is he okay?
I did not. I did not. Yeah, I didn't even realize till I guess it was late. I don't say late. Yeah, but well after the show, that bump. So, wow. What do
Is
you
that the
think?
first time you've seen anything like that before?
If you remember, me and Jay debuted against Sting and Darby in Jersey on the November pay-per-view last year.
Yes, sir.
And as we're going through a couple of different things, um, we as the things rolled out, Darby got up on top of the tall ladder. I don't know, was it 12-foot ladder? And he jumped down from the top of the ladder, not to the floor, but yeah, I mean, he was up on the rim. I mean, it was high, and Satnam caught his ass in midair. That was like, okay, I'm seeing Darby Allin up live. So I've seen the bumps he's taken. Man, I have never. No, I'm not. I have not. To answer your question, no, I've never seen. I guess you could say, at pool parties, Conrad,
Right.
big guys have big guys hanging around the pool, but then you have a bunch of little kids and you toss them in the pool.
Yes.
That's kind of what we got into on homecoming. Wouldn't you say? Jeez.
That was the pool is probably a little more forgiving than the ropes, though. My goodness, I hope he's all right. That was pretty scary looking. We got to ask. There's a lot of headlines that were made in the last week or so. AEW has a new COO.
Oh, yes.
Is this your first time meeting the new COO? Had you met him before through WWE or
Yeah.
PBR or any of that stuff?
Well, I went. What was that? 2018 was the Hall of Fame year. So he had already left when I'd come around, but I think anyway, me and him met each other. I think a couple of times backstage, but I mean truly in passing. So kicking off, I am super. It's. I think back and look, we're starting 2024, and we're going to be doing a lot of content over the next 52 weeks of 2004. So that's like year 1.5 to 2.5 of TNA in those early years. And I've got such a vivid recollection when we started forming the executive staff. And you think about the growth of AEW going from 2 hours of Dynamite and Rampage in the early days, and then just kind of the growth. I'm elated. COO, I think, is a position that has been needed for quite some time. I don't think that is sharing anything outside the box, because I think but it's a part of, I don't say growing pains, but it's the growth of a company. And so I'm
Yes.
very, very excited for Coach A to be on board. I just think when you really drill down in the press release this week that WBD put out, and you take a step back and look at big picture, which we always get caught up. And look, we all do. It's kind of the nature of the beast. It's heck, in so many ways, it is why wrestling to me is so successful in the digital era. It's because of the constant exchange of information. And yes, some people will say Twitter's toxic, and I'd rather stay on Instagram or TikTok. And then you have YouTube over here and all these different kind of things. But at the end of the day, the wrestling industry, no matter what social media platform, is an instantaneous exchange of information, good and bad. But I think it's kind of what makes the world go around. And so I'm super excited to see Coach A on board and the continued growth. And I think with so many things coming up this year, I mean, Wembley was, it feels like moons ago, but how much we've got to do before we get to Wembley. But Sting's last match, you just kind of when you look at the ticket sales and demand, and you think of, I don't recall, look, and I'm not the historian that others are by any stretch, but a guy like Sting, who, he exploded onto the scene in the very, very early stages of the cable television boom, if you will,
Yes.
87, 88. So there's just very few opportunities. I mean, Hogan was, some people don't even, he was a territory guy. And Sting, he worked here in Tennessee, and then he went to Louisiana, and then he Dallas a little bit, and Crockett's and all that. But he really blossomed in a big way right before everyone's eyes. And the Shivani Jim Ross call of Flair Sting in Greensboro. So anyway, I know I'm kind of rambling and all over the place, but it is. I'm excited about Crochet and the growth of AEW. But man, just right around the corner, we're going to be saying goodbye to someone that I think a lot of. He has certainly been one of my rivals going back to the 90s. But we don't, say we, let me say this, the wrestling industry, we don't get these kind of opportunities to have a send-off for a guy who's still active. He's doing a deadgum table spot Wednesday. But it's, shit, I say it all the time, Connie. The business is, it's so much fun. There's so much going on, and I'm excited. Crochet on board, AEW and the momentum and the good, the bad, and the ugly that goes with it. But I went to Jarrett's basketball game the other night, and I'll finish with this, but it kind of wraps the whole story in. There was a guy up there who was working at the game, and at halftime, I went out to get another bottle of water, and we had a few minutes to chat, and he had lived in Charlotte. And then anyway, we just kind of talked about the evolution of the business. And this one guy follows stock prices and Endeavor and all that. I said, hey man, at the end of the day, the wrestling business has changed a massive amount, but on the other hand, it hadn't changed at all. It's people getting in front of the TVs or going to a live event and enjoying themselves. And everybody's got an opinion on wrestling, period.
Well, it's been fun to watch, this build to Sting's last match. It looks like we know who the opponents are going to be. It looks like it's going to be Sting and Darby against the Young Bucks. I can't wait to see what happens at Revolution. As we're recording this, I heard most recently that there were like less than 100 tickets available. I would imagine they're probably going to adjust that. So don't assume it's sold out. Check in often at EWTIX.com. If you've missed your opportunity, they usually open up a few more for production kills as they get closer to the show. We still got a bunch of time to get there, so you're not locked out. AEWTIX.com. And you're not locked out to join them in North Charleston. That's where they'll be tomorrow night for Dynamite. Tickets on sale now, AEWTIX.com. We're going to talk about our topic today, which is Genesis 2009. But before we do, we should mention, since this is largely a TNA podcast at times, Samoa Joe is the top guy in AEW. And for a long time, well, really my entire fandom, whoever was the WWE champion was considered the top guy in the business. And whoever had like the New Japan belt was often considered to be, well, he's probably the best performer, whether that was a Kenny Omega or an Okada or whoever it was over the years, AJ Styles. But Samoa Joe, just a few years removed from WWE saying, we're not going to use you in ring anymore. We're going to make you a commentator. I mean, he did the pandemic WrestleMania, the first one back there in Tampa, as a commentator. And now he's got one of the most important belts in all of wrestling, the AEW world title. I think he even debuted a new world title with side plates with his name on it this past Wednesday. Out there suited and booted, looking like $1 million. I, for one, am here for it. I've been a Samoa Joe fan since 2004. So 20 years of Samoa Joe fandom here. I didn't see it coming, but I'm thrilled it's happening, and I imagine you are too.
Isn't it just amazing? The old Randy Savage lesson that he gave me, Double J, stay on the boat.
Yeah.
Stay in the game. And so hats off, man. You can't say it's a story of perseverance and ended at that, but opportunity. And you just kind of look at, and me and Joe were just talking the other day. He came in the spring of 2022 and had a movie on deck. And so he was gone for a little bit, not long after he debuted, but just kind of looking to hit his ride, so to speak, and the momentum of it. But I think back to the lunch that I had with Mick Foley in Long Island around 03, Conrad, maybe. And that's when we talked about all kind of young talent. I don't know exactly where he is at in his career, but he had watched some episodes of the show, and he obviously referenced AJ Styles, but he brought up Samoa Joe. That's the first time that I'd heard. I can't say that he pitched him to me, but I can say that he was very complimentary of him. And so it was 03, 04. And, when we got the opportunity and Joe, I guess his ROH deal basically expired and he wanted to come on board. And then we brought Joe in. It goes without saying what I think about Joe. He went well over a year without being beat. Yep. That undefeated streak, and lots of pitches and lots of ideas and angles, whether it's from Dutch or Vince or other talent. Of course, everybody wanted to be the first guy to beat Joe, right. And I was it just never felt right. And I'm like, hey, we don't have an opportunity with a guy like a Joe. And my default answer was Joe can win and still help get guys over. And that's an art that to me was taught to me many different ways from my dad and Jerry Lawler, but it is so true. And if you can't really do that, I don't think you can really get to a next level. It's easy to win and get yourself over. It's even more difficult to win and get your opponent over. But Joe could do it, and we rolled along and had no really end in sight on who was going to beat him. And then that quick conversation to Orlando from Dave Hawk, which is Kurt's manager, and said, hey, man, I think we've got you got a shot if you want to have Kurt come on board, and how all that came together, and then the Kurt and Joe trilogy. But I am tickled to death for Joe to get this opportunity, but he knows it better than or as well as I do. Now the hard work starts. He is under the microscope in every imaginable way, especially when you look at 2024 and the hyper criticism and complimentary. It is whoo. It is a pot of boiling water, no matter what. But Joe's up for it, so he's got his work cut out. But congrats to Joe, no doubt.